There's a sickness spreading among men, and it doesn't show up in blood tests or broken bones. It hides behind poetry and playlists, behind late-night texts and long sighs in dark rooms. They say it's heartbreak. I say it's a lie. A pretty word men use to cover up a darker truth. You're addicted to being needed. You see, when a man claims to be in love, more often than not, what he's actually in love with is how someone else makes him feel about himself. She made you feel strong. She made you feel like a savior, like a god walking among insects. But she didn't give you that power. You borrowed it. And like any loan, the debt came due the moment she left. You weren't mourning her. You were mourning the version of yourself that only existed in her eyes. The hero, the protector, the man who was the only one who understood her. You got high on that feeling, like a junkie chasing the rush. And now that she's gone, you're not in pain because she's gone. You're in pain because your supply got cut off. When people talk about withdrawal from heroin, they describe it as physical hell, bones aching, skin crawling, the mind screaming for relief. What you're feeling now, it's the same. But the drug wasn't chemical, it was psychological, emotional. She was your heroine. The need was the needle. And every time she said, "I need you," you got your fix. You see, a man with discipline and power doesn't need to be needed. He chooses where to give his strength. He doesn't hand it out like a beggar feeding pigeons in the park, hoping they stay close. But most men, they confuse being depended on with being valuable. It's not love, it's leverage. And the moment she finds someone else to lean on, you're left alone, shivering in the cold, clutching memories like old receipts that no longer matter. You think she took something from you? No, figlio mio. You gave it all away, piece by piece, every time you answered her midnight calls. Every time you fixed a mess she created. Every time you swallowed your pride to keep her from crying. And now, you're looking at the wreckage pretending it's the remains of a love story. But it's not. It's the aftermath of an addiction. And like any addict, you'll be tempted to go back. You'll convince yourself she's different, that this time it'll work. But listen to me. Every man who trades his soul for the illusion of importance ends up bankrupt. You want to know who you are without her? Look in the mirror when the silence hits hardest. That's the real you, the one you tried to drown in her need for you. You weren't heartbroken, you were high. And now, finally, you're starting to come down. Let's stop calling it a relationship. That word's too clean, too civilized. What you were in was a trade route, a black market economy of emotions, a supply chain where affection was currency, need was demand, and you were the dealer. She didn't love you. She depended on you. And there's a difference so vast, most men live and die without understanding it. You see, when someone loves you, they give, they pour, they build. But when someone depends on you emotionally, they extract, they consume. You become a fuel source, an emotional trafficker delivering doses of reassurance, stability, attention, whatever they're too weak to give themselves. And here's the sick part. You liked it. You liked watching her fall apart without you. It made you feel needed. And you confused that feeling with power. But it wasn't power. It was servitude, dressed in flattery. Because if you really were powerful, you wouldn't need to be clung to. You would stand alone, like a lion who doesn't need a circus to prove his teeth are sharp. You became a warehouse of emotional resources, a distributor, a middleman between her chaos and her comfort. And every time she said, "I can't do this without you," you felt like a king. But kings don't exist to patch broken porcelain with their bare hands. That's not nobility. That's desperation. You want to know how the cartels work? Supply and demand. Simple, ruthless. The one who controls the supply controls the game. But in your case, you didn't control anything. she demanded. You delivered, over and over, and like a fool, you mistook her constant withdrawals from your soul as proof that you mattered. But all it proved was that you had no boundaries. She built a dependence on your presence because you allowed it, and you liked the illusion of being essential. But let me tell you something harsh, something you won't hear in love songs or therapy rooms. A man addicted to being essential becomes disposable the moment he's no longer convenient. That's why you're hurting now. Not because she's gone, but because the trade route collapsed, the port is closed, the shipment stopped. Your product, your comfort, your support, your constant availability has no buyer anymore. And you never learned how to live without exporting yourself to someone else's survival. You ran an emotional cartel, and you got caught in your own trap. Because here's the brutal irony: the more someone needs you to function, the less they respect you. Need creates dependence, but it never creates admiration. The addict doesn't love the dealer, they love the high. So while you were busy playing savior, thinking you were irreplaceable, she was already preparing to import from another source. Because in a world addicted to validation, supply chains are always being optimized. And when someone finds a faster route, a cheaper dealer, or a shinier distraction, they switch. She didn't break your heart. She closed the contract. And the man who tied his worth to her need, he was just another broker in a business where loyalty is a myth, and the product was always you. So now you sit in silence. No calls, no texts, no crisis for you to fix. It's quiet, almost too quiet. And that's when the tremors start. Not in your hands, no, but in your mind. The silence is the first sign that the mask is slipping. The mask you wore when you were her rock, her safe place, the man who never broke. But now, without the drama, without the distractions, you're left with the one person you've been avoiding your entire life: yourself. You thought you missed her, but what you truly miss is the man you pretended to be when she was falling apart. That version of you was calm, in control, noble, needed. But he wasn't real. He was a response to chaos, a firefighter who only felt alive when something was burning. And now that the fire's out, now that the damsel is gone, you're face to face with the man beneath the costume, and it terrifies you. Most men build their identity on being useful, on being the solution. But here's the truth you refuse to say out loud. You don't know who you are when you're not rescuing someone. You don't know how to just be. Your value was always attached to her pain. Without it, you feel weightless, useless, lost. And this is where most break. Because the withdrawal isn't from her touch, it's from the purpose you projected onto her dysfunction. That purpose kept your demons quiet. It gave your wounds a mission. Saving her was your excuse to avoid saving yourself. Because if you truly looked inward, what would you see? A man tired of pretending, a man exhausted from performing strength he doesn't feel, a man who kept giving because he didn't know how to ask, a man who filled her cracks so he didn't have to face his own. You built a life inside her crisis. It gave you direction. Like a soldier with no war, you now wander the battlefield long after the fight is over, hoping for another explosion to give you a reason to move again. But let me tell you something most men never hear. If your identity depends on someone else's need, then it was never your identity to begin with. You borrowed your sense of self from chaos. And now that the chaos is gone, you're just a man in an empty room, staring at his own reflection, waiting for the mirror to lie. But mirrors don't lie. They expose. They reflect. They return exactly what stands before them. And right now, what you see is not weakness. It's the raw, unarmored version of you. The version that existed before she ever cried in your arms, before you ever became her savior. This man, he's not broken. He's just untethered. And this is your chance, not to rebuild the illusion, but to face the truth, the uncomfortable, unforgiving truth that your addiction to being needed was the coffin you built to bury your own identity. But here's the catch. You can walk away from it. You can choose to live, not as someone's protector, not as someone's emotional crutch, but as a man who finds purpose not in chaos, but in clarity. And that begins when you stop asking, "Why did she leave?" and start asking, "Who am I?" when no one's watching. Let me take you back, not to your last argument or your last kiss, but to centuries before either of you existed. Back to a time when a man's worth was measured not by how many hearts he healed, but by how many battles he survived. A time when to protect was an honor, but never a sentence. In the old world, men fought wars to defend what was theirs, their land, their blood, their name. A protector was a warrior. But today, that archetype has been twisted, perverted. The modern man is still taught to protect, but not something noble. He's taught to protect fragile illusions, to hold emotional glass in his bare hands and pretend it's steel. And he's applauded for bleeding. You, my friend, were one of them. You thought protecting her was your duty. That being strong meant absorbing every one of her storms. That love meant shielding her from consequences, reality, even herself. But protection without principle becomes a cage. And you were the one locking yourself inside. You became her guard dog, loyal, vicious when needed, always on call. But here's the trap. The more you protected her from the world, the more you exposed yourself to destruction. You stood in front of every bullet until the day one came from behind. She didn't shoot you, not with a gun, but with something colder, indifference, disrespect, disregard. And it cut deeper than steel. Because while you were building fortresses around her emotions, your own defenses crumbled. You thought she saw your sacrifices. She didn't. You thought your loyalty earned love. It didn't. Because here's the cruel irony. History doesn't teach anymore. When a protector has no code, he becomes a prisoner of sentiment. The Romans understood this. A soldier had honor because he followed virtues, strength, courage, discipline. Not just loyalty to a person, but to a principle. He didn't protect blindly. He chose what was worth bleeding for. But you bled for chaos. You gave your life to an empire of emotional instability, hoping she'd crown you king. But kings aren't crowned in madness. They're devoured by it. You thought being her anchor would keep her close. But anchors don't hold people. They weigh them down. And eventually, she floated away, blaming you for the weight she once begged you to carry. And now here you are, the protector left alone, no one to save, no battlefield to die on, just silence again. But this time, with knowledge. The knowledge that being needed isn't the same as being valued. That the man who gives everything to preserve someone else's peace often finds his own soul in pieces. So you have two choices now. Remain the prisoner, waiting for another cry for help that will chain you again, or become the kind of man who protects from power, not pain, from principle, not people-pleasing. You can still be a protector, Don, but next time, protect your time, protect your values, protect the empire you build within, because no one, not her, not the world, will protect it for you. It hurts, doesn't it? Not just in your chest, but in your bones. Like something sacred was ripped out of you with no warning. Like your insides are echoing with a name that doesn't answer anymore. And here's the part most men never understand. That pain you're feeling, that's not a problem. That's the cure. Let me say it again, slowly. The pain is the cure. It's not a symptom of something broken. It's the fire burning out the infection. You think you're dying, but you're detoxing. You're purging years of illusions, dependencies, and false identity. Every hour you survive without reaching for her is not a failure. It's a step back into power, the shaking, the flashbacks, the compulsive desire to text, to fix, to just hear her voice one more time. It's all part of the poison leaving your system. And like any detox, it gets worse before it gets better. That's what separates boys from men. The boys relapse. They romanticize the drug. They chase the feeling of being needed, of being special, of being the hero again. But men let it burn. They sit in the fire. They scream in silence. And when the flames die down, they walk out clean. Understand this. Most heartbreak isn't about love lost. It's about ego withdrawal. You're not missing her. You're missing the version of you that only existed when she needed you. You're mourning the reflection, not the reality. And here's the truth no one will say aloud. You were never that man, the savior, the protector, the essential. That was a costume stitched together by her problems and your fear of facing your own. The man you truly are, he's beneath all that noise, beneath the weeping, the weakness, the need to be chosen. But you won't find him by running back. You'll find him by standing still, letting the pain sharpen you like a blade left in fire. And it will sharpen you if you stop numbing it. Don't text her. Don't stalk her page. Don't reminisce. Don't fantasize about the comeback. That's the addict in you talking. That's the sickness begging for one last hit. And if you give in, you'll delay your rebirth for another month, another year, maybe another lifetime. You want to be a man of power? Then act like it. Power doesn't chase. Power doesn't beg. Power doesn't attach itself to places it's no longer honored. Because here's the most brutal truth of all. If you still miss her, you haven't met yourself yet. And once you do, once you see who you become when you don't need to be needed, when you stand with no one to save, no drama to fix, no affection to chase, you'll look back at this pain not with bitterness, but with gratitude. You'll realize this wasn't heartbreak. It was liberation dressed in agony. And she wasn't your soulmate. She was your symptom.